the focus on ridicule.
That's not good faith criticism.
You fucking leave me alone.
I'm white and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do this show live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Pacific, till about like 8 or 8:30 or whatever, and then we do some post-game. And then HK leaves because he doesn't like us that much, and then I go really late and drink too much and cause problems. How you doing, HK?
I'm doing great. I don't leave because I don't like you. I leave because I get tired of you.
Oh, that's
I'm just kidding. But yeah, my name is HK Perrin. You can find me on Twitter at HK Perrin, and Perrin like the Worcestershire sauce. And you can also find me in the chat where my name is Sylphweed. And I streamed games on that channel for the first time in a while, which was nice. I figured out like a better video capture setup, so now I can do it more often.
Oh, very nice. Yeah. Did you do that today?
I did that like 3 days ago, I think.
Cool. Well, I have a decision for you to make. We started to watch the recent interview with Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson, but then like, I don't know, half of Left Twitch joined the Video Ninja, and we ended up like not watching very much of it after that. We got like 30 more seconds into it. We have this, or we have... Oh, that's not the right one. I have Eric Weinstein talking to a guy who used to be a Scientologist who got up to OT 7, but then quit and decided to go do remote viewing instead. So we could watch. We watch either of these. It like does not matter to me.
With the Eric Weinstein one, do they talk about geometric unity?
No, it's the physics of UFOs. So absolutely, probably.
The physics of UFOs. Okay, yeah, we should talk about that one.
We're going to do the physics of UFOs. Okay, cool. I believe there's going to be a lot of people that are really happy that we're not...
You fucking leave me alone.
But instead we're...
I don't know what they're smoking over there at Princeton.
All right, without any further...
I, for one, will be happy about that.
Without any further ado...
Eric Weinstein is a lot more amusing.
Were there actually updates in physics, maybe mid-century, that were not disclosed to the public?
Well, I mean, it quieted down because nobody ever got anywhere, or it quieted down because they did get somewhere and it went black.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's finally here, the much anticipated conversation with Eric Weinstein and Hal Puthoff.
The world's most brilliant physics mind of our time is the son of the country's most prominent and important anti-gravity researcher of the 1950s. I don't know what any of this is.
I don't either. This is going to be great.
Engineer and laser physicist. Former NSA and CIA, Hal was a senior advisor to ATIP, the official government.
Oh, come on. Tell us about Scientology. Tell us about Scientology. Tell us he reached OT7. Come on.
UFO investigation program that ran from 2007 to 2012 out of Bigelow Aerospace. He also founded and ran the CIA's psychic spy program called Stargate out of Stanford Research Institute in the 70s.
Psychic spies? Great.
Have a protocol to wield stigma as a tool for keeping its programs secret.
Certainly there are parts of the government who consider that to be their job.
Many of you are already familiar with my colleague Eric Weinstein.
So wait, let's hold on for 1 second, and I do want to talk about our government did actually fund some studies into some really zany woo-woo shit. And it went nowhere, obviously, because that stuff's not true. And like anyone with half a brain at the time could have said it wasn't true. But the government wanted to see on the off chance, like maybe it is true, and maybe we can use it to fight the Russians.
Well, no,
But
a lot of people
wasn't
believe
true.
a lot of people believe that the reason that the US government did it was because the Russians fucking sent propaganda saying that the Russians had figured it out. And so we were like, "Oh shit, they figured out how to read the mind of a goat on the other side of the planet. We got to figure that out too." That's like
possibly.
That's what a lot
But
of
yeah,
people
it went nowhere. So like, yeah, the government studied some weird zany shit, but that's public knowledge. No one wonders why, or I mean, I guess people wonder why we did that. No one wonders what the results were.
Yeah, there's a whole ass movie about it called The Men Who Stare at Goats. It's a comedy movie, but it's about a real fucking thing.
Yeah.
Theory of physics called geometric unity. He's also a prominent yet rebellious cultural commentator who founded the intellectual dark web.
I still carry the sense of I cannot believe I am sitting here discussing visitations from some intelligent life that we don't understand.
This interview is neither for the queasy nor the faint of mind.
There are more videos. Some are better.
How much better?
As good as you could probably want.
For many of your comments, I haven't cut
This video is also not for people who like good audio mixing.
much from this interview. I left it pretty raw, long form, and unedited. It's a deep technical dive into the physics of UFOs, along with the implications of their prominence.
Oh, he's going to do physics on a board again.
That is that we are either being subjected to the most interesting,
Well, okay, so he has his mic like
psyop of all time.
But it is a condenser mic, so at least he knows which type of mic to use in that scenario.
Oh, I was talking to the audio mixing because the music was too loud when Eric and the other guy were talking because their voices don't cut through the same way this guy's does.
I thought you were talking about how awful like the contrast between the two sounds was between like the lavalier mic in one shot and the condenser mic 2 feet away from his face in the other shot.
Well, it's just about different frequencies. Their voices are at a frequency that doesn't cut through the music, where his is at a frequency that does. Frequencies.
Or our top scientists are missing something fundamental about the nature of reality. And finally, Hal gets about as candid as he's ever been about the government psychic spy program Stargate, while Eric, who's a little more skeptical of parapsychology.
So wait, that line right there. Our top scientists are missing something fundamental about the nature of reality. Yes. We know that.
Right, otherwise
everyone knows that.
Right, otherwise
we haven't figured everything out.
Right, otherwise there would be no science to do.
Yeah, we haven't announced yet. We're done. We're done, guys. All the science is done.
We win.
Yeah, there are still physicists because there is still physics to do.
And 70-30 instead of 50-50.
Sorry.
But if you want to do it, feel free to do it. I've told you how to do it, so you can just go do it.
Okay. You don't have a lot of room to move. You either have to postulate new physics, or you have to say this isn't material. Everything here is bold.
My conclusion is that there is something there.
I don't like losing to Jesse. It's horrible losing to him on UFOs. I don't want to lose to him a second time. But something is wildly off.
So with that out of the way, hit subscribe and get ready to unlearn everything you thought you knew about the material world.
Why do they have some of the books blanked out? Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Look,
Oh, you're right.
See this?
They set those books up there. Why would they blur them?
I have an idea. whoever's book
Forbidden
that
knowledge?
is said, "Don't use my book in your whack ass UFO video."
That is a very likely possibility.
Unlearn everything you thought you knew about the material world with Eric Weinstein and Hal Puthoff.
Different parts of the brain have different activities.
But you know that, don't you?
Maybe you should interview me.
His intro is very well done.
A lot of copyright
Give him that.
infringement, but yeah.
The Intelligence Committee has ordered
I think a lot of that was public domain at this point.
and the Secretary of Defense to deliver a report on the mysterious sightings of unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, more commonly known as UFOs.
The reason I found the report fascinating was because it reeked of conflict. I could clearly detect a voice, an authorial voice that wanted to disclose more, and one that said over my dead body. And the over my dead body people seem to be stronger but losing ground. The first branch of the decision tree is it stuff that is unintentionally in the air versus stuff that is intentionally in the air? The unintentional stuff
That's
is
not
broken
true.
into two categories. And that was clutter and atmospheric effects. The stuff that is intentionally in the air was broken into the next branch.
So wait, pause it for a second. He's assuming, first of all, that the instruments are showing something that's real. I mean, it could be the effect of the instruments not understanding what they're seeing.
Or just a or just a malfunction of the instruments, a function of the optics, a function of the sensor.
Yeah. The instrument's just not seeing something that wasn't there at all.
Right, because think about like how many UFOs that people show. You're like, wait a minute, isn't that just a lens flare? And so, like,
yeah, and like the things where people talk about rods. Have you heard of that? I'm talking about rods, and it's like you go out and you take a picture in the middle of the night with the flash on around a bunch of mosquitoes. Guess what you're gonna see?
What appear to be UFOs.
Streaks of light where they bounced off the mosquitoes.
Well, I guess they are UFOs if you don't know they're mosquitoes.
Yeah, true.
Because you've not identified them. But yeah, a lot. Or sometimes too, there was one where they thought they saw UFOs, and then like a debunk crew went out and filmed video. Like they shined a light in one direction, took the camera and put it offset, and you could clearly see that they were just birds. Like if the camera was offset from the light source, you know what I'm saying? Like if it was at a 45-degree angle, you could see it was birds. But if you put it like right in line with the light source, the reflection of the light off the birds was so strong that it would just look like light orbs.
Yeah, so it could be something we see that is something completely mundane that we just don't understand what we're seeing because we don't understand all of the optics of the camera.
Right, but your question, is it even a thing, is the first part of the decision
tree. Is it even
tree.
real?
Right.
That would be the first thing.
Yeah, because it just, if radar malfunctions, it's not even really it's not even a malfunction. It's just a function of the way that it works.
Well, if it's seeing something that's not there, it kind of would be a malfunction or an unintentional function.
Right. We'll call it an unintentional function so as to not throw shade at it. Don't.
Yeah, but like, is it an artifact of the instruments? That would be like the first thing in that tree.
Right, or if it's a person that saw it, was there mind playing tricks on them?
Yeah.
I guess the person would be the instrument then, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
some people really are tools, so that makes sense.
Us, not us. Not us was broken into two things: known others and unknown others. And that other is intentionally in the air, not us, not anyone we know. Not necessarily aliens. Could be coming out of the ocean, could be time travel. I mean, who the hell knows?
That's a lot of assumptions.
Anything in that other category is astonishing.
I think one very important thing that most people in government who study this seem to sort of have a consensus on, that the public might not realize is the idea that there is a separation between substrate and signature when it comes to UFOs. And there might be a difference in terms of the way somebody perceives it and some underlying sort of proto-architecture.
Yeah.
And so if we have been seeing these things for thousands of years, we've been seeing them in different forms.
Different forms and maybe different sources.
Mm-hmm.
We've been seeing birds for thousands of years.
Those aren't real.
So high to generate effects they could mimic, and our detection platforms are so well advanced so we could see a lot more. Then it really is a zoo of options and possibilities. And so, for example, for the Tic Tac videos that are so well known, Lou Elizondo was behind releasing those videos. I remember seeing them in the Pentagon before they were released.
Man, it's really hard to understand what these people are saying. This is like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, the more I compress it, like the harder it is to understand. It just gets louder and harder and incomprehensible. They could have like, I don't know. Did they EQ this in such a way that you really can't understand it? They'd be like, where's the frequency where it sounds the most like people are mumbling, and can we amplify that as much as possible while reducing the amplitude of every other frequency in their voice?
I think it's also just muffled because they have the microphone probably not in the best place.
Yeah, it's supposed to be down further.
Yeah. But like one of the consequences, if there were actually UFOs, that, you know, people who talk about UFOs very rarely talk about this consequence of, if there were actual UFOs, we would have more evidence of them now because everyone has cameras on their phone or like in their pocket all the time. Because everyone has cameras, we would be seeing more evidence now than we were in like the 1950s or whatever. But the amount of evidence for UFOs stays the same across time. There's like the same number of incidents of UFOs,
or maybe per capita or whatever. Also, I want to be clear, like, you mean like if there was evidence of an alien or like something otherworldly visiting us or something, you know what I'm saying? The UFO sighting thing, just like, you see an airplane, you don't know if it's fucking United or Delta. That's to some extent a UFO. Can't see don't know what.
But I'm talking about something that you put it on the internet and no one can explain it. Like, if there were really UFOs, we would have more evidence of them as smartphones started to proliferate, but we don't. We have the exact same amount of evidence of them, which is to say very little and very low reliability evidence.
Right, there's this funny meme. It's like, oh shit, I don't know what the fuck that is. Get the worst camera you can get your hands on. Let's get a picture of it.
Quick, take a picture. No, focus on something else.
How much better?
Well, as good as you could probably want.
If you showed me pieces of a craft and you guaranteed me somehow that it came from outside the solar system, my first thought wouldn't be technology. It would be physics. Because everything is so far away from us, other than our solar system, that I would be wondering, well, how did it get here? When you look at the Civil War in the United States,
Derek, don't.
In the 1860s. Within less than 100 years, we were dropping fusion devices from jet aircraft. Less than 100 years, less than a single lifetime, it means that we almost had a nuclear civil war, and it was a very near miss. Now, what separated the...
Weren't bombers turboprops in World War II?
But by the 60s, by the 60s, it was 100 years later. By the 60s, they were jets. There was jet aircraft.
Yeah, but I don't think we dropped nukes from jets.
All right, I don't want to get bogged down in that.
I could be wrong.
Yeah, let's not get bogged down in that.
Yeah.
From 1952, when we have the first fusion weapon explode, it was changes in our understanding of the physical world. That means anytime you have a profound physical insight post, 1940s, you have to ask yourself, what Pandora's box would a new physical insight potentially open?
How much do you think his coffee mug cost?
I think I see where
I don't know why we're not more worried.
What was that?
How much do you think his coffee mug costs?
Failing at physics for 50 years. We've gotten out of the habit.
It looks like it's just
physics is really dangerous, and
plain
you have to track
clay.
every single important physics
Artisan.
Because any change in our physical understanding of the universe.
I think I know where he's going with this. I think he's going to say that he can't share how much he's revolutionized physics because he's too afraid that we'll build weapons with it.
I don't know if he's going to lean really hard on geometric unity because it's the last couple times I've heard him talk about it. His host has had to really kind of push him to talk about it because I think he knows that people make a lot of fun of him and he doesn't like that. So I think he's not going to lean into that in this. Just like the other guy's not going to lean into how he once achieved the level of OT7 in Scientology. Geometric unity is the OT7 of Eric Weinstein.
Of the IDW.
Yeah. Like going clear is just when you realize that phrenology is maybe not the way to go, but the IQ test is, you know.
Were there actually updates in physics, maybe mid-century, that were not disclosed to the public?
Another puzzle we would love to have cleared up is an understanding of the role of aerospace companies as holders of potentially basic scientific knowledge not shared with the academic world. Is it possible? It seems very wrong to me.
Maybe wrong, but it's true.
It is true. You believe it's true.
Yeah, I know it's true.
You know that there's physics knowledge held by aerospace companies that is not
There
known.
certainly is materials knowledge.
Materials, well, okay, material
which
science.
involves topological physics or whatever. I mean.
Okay. But fundamental physics as opposed to, condensed matter or...
Right. Certainly aerospace corporations have knowledge in the UAP area that specifically are sequestered against FOIA.
Oh,
because of proprietary
I appreciate
labels, which the whole thing was set up to be that way on purpose.
Right, but the idea that there would be fundamental physics knowledge that would be housed in an aerospace company and not shared with the physics community, there is no...
Look at the poor host. The poor host is like, why am I doing this? Oh, for money.
That I know of.
And I wouldn't...
That doesn't mean it's not the case, but...
What does he mean by fundamental, though? Like, is he talking about some law of nature that they know, or is he talking about, like, this particular shape of a wing is like 0.001% better than this other more common shape of a wing?
I think when he's saying fundamental physics, I think he's like kind of almost trying to gatekeep the other crazy person.
What do you mean?
I mean, like I think he's trying to like sort of, I think he is not happy with this other guy. You can already kind of tell by his tone. He's already kind of negging him a little bit. And I think he's trying to gatekeep the guy. I think he's trying to like say, no, I am the physics understander. And, are these fundamental physics, are there fundamental things in physics being kept from us by aerospace companies or by private entities? The guy's like, hey, there's stuff that they're keeping proprietary because it's trade secrets. The other guy's right. Yes, of course they don't have to share that shit with the universities. It's a fucking trade secret. And Eric's like, well, that's not fundamental physics. I get the feeling that this is going to be Eric's not going to like this guy at all because this guy's just as batshit as Eric and he thinks he's cracked the fucking code too. I get the feeling it's going to be polite, but Eric might start getting pretty condescending with this guy. I'm starting to get that vibe already just by how he's talking to him currently.
I'm really excited for that.
Crazy egregious.
It would change our entire concept of who we are if somebody kept fundamental physics secret in the years since we became capable of exploding fusion devices. Right. I would grab a pitchfork.
Wait, what is with this editing? Now they're in a different place.
Yeah, I'm very confused about this. So there's two conversations that are being edited together. There's these two people, which are, correct me if I'm wrong, these are the two people sitting on the couch, Eric and the host.
Yeah.
And then there's the other guy who's not in this room, right?
Right. They were in a
sitting
different
on
room.
the chair.
Right.
That's Hal.
Right.
Okay. So this conversation is happening outside of the conversation that they also had with Hal.
I'm guessing it after, because it seems to be referring back to the conversation with Hal. But it's just a guess. But yeah, this is weird that it's stitched together like this. It doesn't sound like it's being stitched together. Like if you weren't watching this, you wouldn't know that it was two conversations stitched together. Like if it just went out as a podcast, it'd be hard to tell.
Yeah, and why not, like, if you're going to react to it, why not just react afterward? Like, show the entire interview with Hal and then react to the interview after that.
This guy might have gone to the David Fuller school of every YouTube video is a film.
Torch, and I would march on the National Science Foundation.
Right. Right.
I would love to see him run into the National Science Federation with a torch and go, "You're hiding the science." That would be amazing. They'd be like, "Sir, you can't have fire in here, sir."
Oh, Hal's also sitting on a couch
by himself.
Yeah.
The other two
That's
have body
strange.
thetans still. It's like, I can't sit on the couch with you.
It'd only be if it were the case that in fact we have mastered anti-gravity and they're being built by aerospace corporations, then new physics would have to be involved.
Is what is called the golden age of general relativity tied to these topics? That is, there was this bizarre surge of activity in general relativity between, I would say the time of Einstein in the 50s or something like that. There wasn't a ton of development in GR, and then suddenly there was this explosion. There's
the explosion. There's a famous series came out in the Miami Herald and other newspapers in probably the 50s. The author was Talbert, and he did a series where he found out that a number of aerospace engineering companies were suddenly interested in anti-gravity, and that,
well, I would be if I was making fucking things that fly.
Up and down, really top level physicists were suddenly getting grants to look at the idea of anti-gravity. For example, the gravity essay came along.
It's from the Gravity Research Foundation in Boston.
Right. And so it looked like it was going to be a big explosion. But anyway, then it all sort of quieted down.
Because they looked into it and they're like, "Oh, we can't do this, actually."
Yeah. Or at least we can't do this now.
Right. This is beyond our abilities at this point. You don't start, like, people stopped giving funding to it because there was no results. Or the results were like, nah. You don't throw
like there are always results. It's just, are the results, yeah, we can build this tech, or no, this either we can't build it or it's unbuildable.
Right. And the scientific paper would never say this is unbuildable. This is impossible. It would say we can't do this. We are not finding any.
For something that's logically consistent, no scientist would ever say it's unbuildable. But for something that's logically inconsistent, sure, it might be unbuildable.
Right. Based on what we know about gravity right now, which is actually still vanishingly little. We know how it works, but not how it works, We know how it works. We know how to make predictions, but we don't know what causes it. Right. That's the how it works.
Yeah.
how it works squared.
We have yet to find a particle that is a force carrier of gravity.
Could take two implications of that, and that is it quieted down because nobody ever got anywhere, or it quieted down because they did get somewhere and it went black.
My understanding is that there were really twin loci of activity, one of which surrounds a Gravity Research Foundation in New Boston, New Hampshire, and I guess that was the work of Babson. And the story is sort of not really very plausible, that his sister had drowned in a pond or something to that effect, and so he had gravity as his sworn enemy. You know this story?
No, I had not heard this.
Oh yeah,
I would call like maybe currents my sworn enemy, or lakes.
I think that sounds like a tall tale.
Right, or it could be a dark joke that you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like it doesn't sound implausible that his sister drowned in a what did he say, in a pond?
Yeah.
But it sounds implausible that he would blame gravity for that.
Right, that's like blaming gravity if you go skydiving and your parachute malfunctions.
That would make more sense to blame gravity for.
Right.
Because you can swim despite gravity, but you can't stop falling despite gravity without a parachute.
And a pond isn't like, there are times when you can't swim, even if you're a good swimmer. Like if you get caught in a nasty current or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're done. The water will kill you.
I should clarify. You certainly can stop falling despite gravity, but it happens very quickly and generally results in your death.
It's traumatic.
Yeah.
So Babson contacted Lewis Whitten, who was coming out of Johns Hopkins, and then oddly, the similarly named individual named Bainson, with some sort of tobacco or air conditioning fortune, reaches out to Bryce.
Tobacco or air conditioning fortune? How could you not know which?
Those are two very different things.
Whatever. It's tobacco or fortune, or it was big air conditioning. See? Yeah. These articles are old enough that people talk like that, right?
Either he invented the printing press or he made a killing in cocaine.
Why not both?
And asks whether he will found an institute at the University of North Carolina.
Yeah. Gutenberg actually did make a killing in cocaine.
Fields.
Not a lot of people know that.
Particularly focusing on gravity.
That's not true.
Particularly focused on gravity. Now somehow DeWitt has the courage to answer this essay contest in the other silo and destigmatizes it. So there was money to be had, but nobody wanted to touch it because of fear of ridicule from their colleagues. And then there's a famous gravity conference at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, that sort of kicks a lot of this off. It's a tremendous flurry of activity at a time when anti-gravity was trying to break into respectability. At a minimum, we know that the Glenn Martin Company...
for everybody listening on the podcast, they just switched again to where it's just Eric talking to this guy next to a whiteboard, and the former Scientologist and former remote viewing guy is now no longer part of the conversation. I feel like every time they do this, we have to tell the podcast listener this, otherwise they're like missing like almost all of the context.
Yeah, we should just say switch.
Switch. All right, cool. We'll do it.
Martin was an early pioneer, I think from the time of the Wright brothers. That the Glenn Martin Company becomes Martin Marietta, later becomes Lockheed Martin. So that word Martin is coming all the way through. Was employing, I believe, Lewis Whitten, Edward Whitten's father, to do anti-gravity research, somehow tied up with Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio and the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. So there's something about aerospace in the 1950s and sort of post-Manhattan Project era that's pretty potent. And we're confused by this. Why was Solomon Lefschetz, the great topologist, recruited to be involved with Lewis Whitten and to have an entire nonlinear group working on mathematics that then gets moved to Brown University when I believe that these programs are sunsetted. So they get spun off back into the academic ecosystem. I don't know what any of this is.
So you have top physicists working on
But you have
crazy
to-
stuff,
but
anti-gravity.
Most physicists don't know this story,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's like, I knew it because it was weird. It stood out. The Lewis Witten, Edward Witten story has never been fully made sense. The world's most brilliant physics mind of our time is the son of the country's most prominent and important anti-gravity researcher of the 1950s.
Do you think that string theory, which Ed Witten worked on, is intentionally a bridge to nowhere?
I have privately said to you that string theory was a very odd development because it both allowed physics to proceed as if it was doing something new while breaking no new ground in the physical world in which we live. I don't really know. If you were trying to stagnate the field, string theory is pretty brilliant. If there was knowledge that allowed you to traverse the cosmos, in other words, if you could render
I think
Einstein's theory effective.
Like, yes, you can say that in hindsight about string theory, but like, how could you say that at the time? Like, we didn't know whether it would pan out, and it turned out to have not panned out. So, like,
just like anti-gravity.
I feel like Eric is just being a Monday quarterback, Monday morning quarterback. Is that the term? Monday morning quarterback of physics.
And he also just doesn't like string theory. He's talked so much shit about it. Like when he talks about geometric unity, I think he's got like a chip on his shoulder about people who study it anyway.
Yeah.
Just the way Einstein rendered Newton's theory non-fundamental.
And also he talks about it as if nothing of value came out of string theory. But like, string theory did produce things of value, just nothing that corresponded to reality. It didn't give us new insights about reality, but it gave us a lot of new tools regarding mathematics. Like, a lot of new math was developed for string theory. It just so happens that math describes things that don't exist in our reality, as far as we can tell.
I think he thinks if like something doesn't basically upend a field, that it didn't give us anything useful. It seems like him and his brother both kind of seem to think that.
Yeah. And it's a very annoying view to have about science, because then it's like, why bother even trying with anything?
Right, unless you come out here like some kind of fucking charlatan and tell everybody you've revolutionized an entire field, then what are you even doing with your life?
Yeah.
Like somebody like plugging away in a lab, or plugging away, I don't know what the corresponding thing would be for like theoretical physics or string theory, but like plugging away, doing the work, doing the equations, trying to test like some hypothesis. Like, if you haven't upended the entire field, then like, what the fuck are you even doing?
Yeah, like in Eric's mind, you're either like the most revolutionary scientist of your time, or you're just entirely useless.
From Einstein's theory and a limit, to not share that knowledge with,
I know which one Eric is,
would be seen as,
it's the opposite of the one he thinks he is.
Yes.
Gross academic and intellectual malpractice.
Yeah, if somebody had that level of knowledge, I mean, the best that we could do in the ATIP program was say, okay, let's accept Einstein's GR as being the theory.
Okay.
Even though there are all kinds of arguments for why it's something.
By GR, you mean general relativity.
General relativity. And for this subject area, for the UAP subject area, as far as we've gone, is to say, okay, suppose I treat general relativity, Einstein's equations for general relativity, the way I would treat Maxwell's equations for electromagnetism. If we could manipulate variables in Einstein's equations the way we manipulate variables in Maxwell's equations, you would see certain kinds of things which tend to match claimed observations of UAP phenomena. Somewhere there's a missing key. for how you can do manipulation of those variables in Einstein's equations without having to have a black hole in your pocket.
Are you talking about the idea that you want to promote constants to field content, to be actual physical fields that can vibrate and live and move?
Yes, I would say so.
But then you have the quantum mechanical consequences. When you promote something to field content, you break it, you bought it. You've got a lot of...
you got fluctuations and uncertainty principles.
And it contributes to all sorts of processes, and sometimes you get explosions of terms of series, and things stop converging, and things can get quite bad. Is that something that you feel you've handled?
Well, at a certain level.
How can we describe in layman's terms the idea of promoting a constant, like a gravitational constant, into a field variable? So a very kind of helpful actually analogy used for me, I'm a total idiot when it comes to this stuff, is a circle.
Oh, should we read what it said on the screen too? It was like
the circle is pi.
It said like, what if gravity is a variable, not a constant? Is a field variable, not a constant? Could it be changed?
Squared, and so if the circle had bumps in it, or if it was topologically different in some way, pi wouldn't be pi. Pi would sort of be more variable.
In such circumstances, something that you thought was a constant turns out to be variable when considered in a larger space of possibilities. Likewise, if I asked, what is the temperature in this room? I'm feeling a little bit chilly, and you might say, oh, I think the temperature is 64. But then we might find out that in fact the room varies between 63 degrees and the 69 degrees in a different corner of the room. So something that you thought was a number, like we just
fucking galaxy brain. The temperature by the window might be a little bit different than the temperature by the door based on a number of different factors, including where the fucking vent is for the air conditioning.
I was gonna say he has a good point, but then he gave that really stupid analogy. So his good point was that yes, there might be something that our current physics considers a constant that could actually be a variable. Something along the lines of in Newtonian physics, gravity was thought, well, this is a bad example, but in Newtonian physics, gravity was thought to propagate instantaneously. And that works for a lot of equations, that works for a lot of the predictions we were attempting to do at the time. But it doesn't work when you get to the extremes. The extremes of our understanding. And when Einstein figured out that gravity actually propagates at the speed of light, at the speed of causation is the more accurate term, that was novel. And it was kind of like, this is a bad example, like I said, but there are other examples where like Newtonian physics has some thing that is considered a constant, and when you generalize it more, I mean, in general, it's a constant in the kind of like areas that we're talking about with Newtonian physics, but when you calculate it at the extremes, then the variable portion matters.
Well, isn't the thing you're describing there one of the reasons that people think that there's going to be some theory of everything that unifies the standard model, and I forget what and like gravity, like isn't that like the thing you're describing? Isn't that one of the motivating factors for like legitimate scientists to be trying to find like a grand unified theory or something like that? Like,
yes, but in that sense, it's much more. It would be much more revolutionary than it was to go from Newtonian physics to relativity. Not that Newtonian physics to relativity wasn't revolutionary. It certainly was. But they both kind of operate in the same way, whereas a theory of quantum gravity would operate in a remarkably different way than relativity at the extremes. It would be able to generalize to relativity. Like whatever we come up with would have to be able to generalize to relativity, because we know that relativity is accurate. It may not be true, but it's accurate. You know what I mean?
Well, I also kind of wonder is like when you describe the extremes, right? And I don't know exactly what you're talking about there, but as we get out to what we would describe as extremes kind of in anything, isn't our ability to measure and calculate going to be like reduced as we get out to what we would call an extreme, just because it's for lack of a better way to talk about it, out there? So like, because our understanding of it is so limited, our ability to kind of measure and do experiments and do equations about it is going to be like more limited too. It just kind of stands to reason to me, you know?
Yeah. With our current levels of technology, it is very difficult to imagine that we would have some sort of way to experiment with these extremes that I'm talking about. And by what I mean by extremes is things like extreme gravity. So like in the middle of a black hole, you know, beyond the event horizon, how does gravity act? How does matter act beyond that? And those are things that relativity can't explain. You know, we do the calculations and we end up with numbers that don't make sense. You know, we end up with like a point that has infinite density. And like, how does a point have infinite density? That doesn't make sense logically. I mean, maybe it's true. Maybe
it seems to me that we're probably going to get, as we get there, I feel like it's just going to be incremental increases of understanding, incremental like small discoveries that are going to bring us to closer to the unification of these ideas or whatever. I don't think it's going to be just like out of the blue. Like it doesn't seem, well, I mean, like the other thing is like when people talk about Einstein and stuff, it's not like the shit came out of the blue and it wasn't just him. It was him and his team. He worked with other people on this, right? It wasn't just him doing it by himself. And they had incremental discoveries on their way to what they the big thing that they figured out. And so I feel like a lot of the talk about this is just kind of pie in the sky bullshit, where like all of a sudden, boom, now we understand. And there's just so few things that really work that way. I mean, that just isn't it. That isn't the thing.
Yeah. And even even Einstein, he was working with ideas that were kind of in progress at the time. Like we knew the problems that Newtonian physics had. Like we knew that certain things didn't make sense in Newtonian physics. We just hadn't put it all together and explained it with one theory. And that's what Einstein did. He put together some disparate ideas and added a lot of his own new ideas and created a cohesive theory that made sense. And anything that's going to explain the universe better than relativity is likely going to come about in the exact same way. Someone working with these disparate ideas that already exist and adding new ideas on top of those, rather than just saying, let's throw away all of relativity, let's throw away all of quantum mechanics, and let's completely rewrite a new thing.
We had inflation estimates of 6.8 and then 7.0%. And I was very angry about that because my claim was that you should report inflation on various maps the way you show the temperatures in the country on a temperature map with gradients and isotherms and what have you. If you do that to numbers like, for example, the gravitational constant, that constant could be the value of a function. And if it was the value of a function and then that function became quantum mechanical, you would have to treat it quantum mechanically. It's not cheap to replace a number by a function or a field. We have an entire planet pulling us towards these couches.
Switch.
And yet, when the interview is done, we will get up from these couches, defeating an entire planet. The weakness of gravity is one of the great mysteries of our lives. It's inconceivably weak.
True enough, yeah.
And if we accept Einstein's general relativity as again, I'm not quite sure how much of it you take issue with. It would seem that we're either prisoners here, or that we have to lean so heavily on time dilation, or that we would have to amass levels of energy. I mean, your point is,
we can't do it from what we know, for sure.
Okay, so then the idea is we'd have to have something wrong in GR.
Yeah, something is at least missing.
Okay.
And maybe GR is okay as it goes, but we're missing something that would have the effect of manipulating the variables in there that we can't do with any reasonable engineering approach.
Well, so far as I know, there's only one analog that even smells vaguely like this in electromagnetism. Aronoff and Bohm argued that if you passed an electron beam around a solenoid and passed a current through it, if it was perfectly insulated, you would have no E and B fields out, that is electric and magnetic fields, outside of the solenoid, but yet you'd get a phase shift in the electron beam as it circled. This is what's known as a holonomy effect.
You guys talk about this incredible experiment called the Bohm-Aronoff effect. Can you show me the actual experiment?
Oh, here we go.
Imagine you have some sort of an electron gun.
Are you drawing a dick?
You have a beam.
Oh, you are.
He is 100% drawing a dick. He just drew it coming.
So that they bounce off of that mirror.
He drew a conflection. Double conflection.
Down on my tabletop experiment.
It's a boomerang.
Some sort of a detector over here.
Boomerang effect.
I have a wire here that's heavily, heavily insulated. I can imagine running a current through this wire, this solenoid in the center, and the E and B fields would be dead equal to zero because of the insulator. However, when I pass current through this wire, mysteriously the detector picks up different patterns of self-interference of the phase of the electron function. In other words, this setup can detect whether there's current passing through the wire despite near perfect insulation. That was what was so frightening in the late 50s, is that we were discovering.
So wait, didn't he just explain it right there?
I just heard him say near perfect insulation, which is different than perfect insulation. So if it's near perfect, you're near perfect insulation. If you have sensitive enough equipment, you can detect it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Like, despite near perfect insulation. Okay, well, I can get through a door despite a near perfect lock.
Right? Or like we have like nearly instantaneous communication if both of us have a good internet connection, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to clash because of the latency. You know?
Yeah, it's still not perfect.
Right? Come on. Oh man. This guy tries to blind people with science, but then like he just fucking says the thing that explains the whole thing. He's like, well, despite near perfect, it's like, well, it's nearly perfect.
Yeah, then it's not perfect.
My roof is nearly perfect. Why is there water on my floor? Fuck, dumb fuck.
It wasn't the electromagnetic fields at all that were really the important actor in the electromagnetic story. We thought we understood electromagnetism from the time of Maxwell, but clearly the electromagnetic 4 potential was really the
customers are complaining about our amusement ride despite near perfect survival rates.
Or is it just this sort of weird
geometrically? I think we have a very good handle.
Okay. And so you mentioned the Higgs.
My insurance went up, except despite my near perfect driving.
What would the electromagnetic 4 potential geometrically look like?
Well, it looks like a version of the Escher staircase or the Penrose stairs. In effect, those stairs would be something like, we would call them horizontal subspaces. The
Their Escher staircase sucks because they couldn't they can't just steal an Escher drawing.
Going up the stairs and yet never climbing in height. That would be what we would call a holonomy effect due to curvature.
Paradox.
And you can go way beyond that. So there are all kinds of toroidal geometries, for example, where you have no EM fields whatsoever, but you have strong vectored scalar fields. And since you have no Lorentz force in the absence of E and B, then how can you detect them? Well, you detect them by any kind of quantum detector that can detect phase shifts, can detect the vector and scalar potential even in the absence of fields. So there's a whole engineering approach concerning which I have 2 patents, by the way, and have started a new company.
I've seen a patent for a Santa Claus detector.
It involves only dealing with vector and scalar potentials.
When you are trying to come up with this analogy between electromagnetism and general relativity to explain some of these effects, are you dealing only with the Levi-Civita connection of the metric as Einstein did, or are you considering...
I'm basically dealing with the metric coefficients by postulating a dielectric vacuum whose dielectric constant values for, say, epsilon and mu, the permeability and permittivity of the vacuum, can be manipulated. And once you manipulate those, you're manipulating C, which is 1 over the square root of mu epsilon. And so once you begin to manipulate C, then you can change effects associated with all of the, and so you could, with this polarizable vacuum approach, which I published in Physics Journal, you can get all of the, quote, tests of general relativity and so on. So the fact that you might be able to pursue that further by taking into account the fact that underlying electromagnetism is vacuum fluctuations, which have the effect of controlling the value for epsilon and mu. So then you say, okay, well, if I want to go over to general relativity, maybe I can control the underlying values for the metric coefficients. So there are various mathematical approaches to kind of pushing Einstein's equations to be not quite Einsteinian.
So we're not talking about, this is what has been confusing to me. There's a question of accepting the Einsteinian prison or trying to do to Einstein what Einstein did to Newton, and then say there's a more fundamental theory. And what you're really saying is that you're trying to come up with a more fundamental theory than general relativity, in which many of the things that are hard-coded are in fact vacuum expectation values that are only discernible.
All right, we're going to put a fork in this. I'm not going to rage quit like I did the last couple of weeks, though. You know what would have been really nice is if we would have had somebody on this show with like a background in some of this stuff. I feel like that would have been really, really helpful. But the other thing is, they're like, this is supposed to be about the physics of UFOs.
Yes, and so far they've just been talking about general relativity.
Right. And this stuff, it doesn't drive me crazy so much. It does in a way, because this is ostensibly targeted toward a lay audience, right? Like, this is not targeted towards physicists, like this discussion.
It is targeted, I feel like it's targeted toward an audience that will be impressed by big words.
Right, but what I'm saying is, like, this is targeted toward a lay audience, but the problem with that is
a specific lay audience. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. The problem with that is they haven't really gone through and explained anything in like sort of a way that a lay audience could understand. And I think that maybe that's by design. Maybe I'm kind of getting at what you were saying a second ago, is that it's like, it may not even be baffling with bullshit. There may be some blinding with science going on here, and it's probably a combination of the two. Where, like,
Eric desperately wants to be taken seriously. So I feel like he has relegated himself to audiences of lay people who don't understand the words that he uses. And when he's talking to someone who does understand the words that he's using, he's not talking to a professional who's actively working in the field.
And when he has, they've said things like, well, we need to see more. And then they did it.
Yeah.
Then they did a song making fun of him.
Yeah.
That song making fun of him was great. So I think that it would be fascinating if you didn't know who the fuck Eric is and what the fuck he's about, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me, even knowing who Eric is, but it's fascinating for a very different reason that Eric intends.
Right. Like the couple times he did try to break it down in sort of so that a layperson could understand, his example of the room being feeling warmer to you than it does to me was the dumbest fucking example in the world, because it could just be that I'm sitting by the window and you're sitting near the air conditioning vent.
I tried to rival how dumb that example was by giving an also very dumb example, but I don't know. Maybe mine surpassed his. Audience, you decide.
So this stuff, I don't generally like going into this stuff because, like I said, I don't think you or me really have the background for it. You're a software engineer and I'm a talk show host. So,
yep.
And that's
neither
fine.
of
Those
us are physicists,
right? But those are fine
and
things.
we can still call out Eric's bullshit,
right? But those, being a software engineer or a talk show host, those are fine things to be, right? It's okay to be those things. It doesn't make you dumb. It's just that like our critics would come in here and be like, oh, well, you're making fun of things that you clearly don't understand. And to some extent, sure, I guess, right? Like, but my thing is that I don't think Eric knows what he's talking about based on the limited interaction that he's had with people in the field of physics who have clearly said that they think he's full of shit.
Yeah, like if he wants to be taken seriously in the field, talk to other experts in the field. Like, don't just keep talking to crazy people and pretending that you're intending to talk to a lay audience, even though you're just blinding them with science, like you said.
Or baffling them with bullshit. I'm telling you, it's a combination of the two, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, that's my main criticism here is that, and this other guy, if you get a chance, just take a look into Hal. I forget what his name was. He, in the 60s and 70s, he was like heavily involved in Scientology, reached OT7, seems to have cut ties with Scientology as well. Anyone should. But then like got into remote viewing, and like, these are like the Scientology thing. People be like, oh, that's ad hominem. Yeah, that is ad hominem. What now? But the rest of his career arc,
well, that's poisoning the well.
Okay, well, cool. I'm down to poison the well. Like, whatever. But the rest
like,
of
we'll also talk about his argument.
But well, the rest of his career is all studying bullshit too.
Yeah.
Like, just because he was studying bullshit for a university doesn't mean that it wasn't bullshit. And instead of just being like, oh, this didn't all pan out and it looks like none of this was real, he went the other way with the rest of his career and became a ufologist, basically. And there are people who study the UFO phenomena who do it in a very skeptical way and do a great job. Again, there's nothing wrong with being a ufologist. You're studying a cultural phenomena. You're maybe taking a look at things that people are seeing in the sky, trying to figure out what they are. Interesting shit. If you're doing it in a way that isn't just self-aggrandizing or whatever the fuck. Like, we want to know what's, like, if we don't know what the fuck something is in the sky, there's no problem with trying to figure out what it is. But then going and having a fucking discussion with some crackpot fucking venture capitalist about the physics of UFOs, that's maybe not the way, dude. That's just not the way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, you said you're bad at it, but I'll make you do it till you're good at it. Can you read the show out?
All right. Thank you for watching / listening, depending on where you're getting the content. And we do this show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's Pacific time. And we go straight on through to Red Light, where we keep talking on Twitch So if you're listening to the podcast, check us out on Twitch sometime and check out Red Light. And support us on Patreon. It's patreon.com/ what was it?
Echoplex.
Echoplex. All right.
This is Boomers by Periscope. I will be back with red lights and a drink.